needed to talk about this with somebody, and I needed to like let my thoughts out about it and my reflections out about it, and just kind of like speak out loud all these things that I've been thinking about in my head when it comes to this specific subject. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I did have an article up that was recommended that I might reference at some point, or just maybe link it in the description box below this video. I don't really know how to start this video because there's just been so many, like, to try and think of all of the experiences that I've had in my life and all of the moments that I've had in my life, and just like all of these little details that make up the whole collection of why I even thought this to begin with and feel that I am this to begin with, would take a lot. I would have to write a book. But I want to talk about it because I feel like it makes up a big part of, like, this is something that I talked about with my husband because okay, so just me as a person, outside of like taking on any label, because I believe that like words hold spells. I believe that we can cast spells with our words. So I like to be really intentional with my words. But I also understand that sometimes it's helpful to use labels with other people you're interacting with so they can better understand you. I'm not using the labels to better understand me. I'm using the labels so that other people can understand me better. I just want to make that clear first off. And just to kind of give you some backstory, if you're new here, even if you're not new here, this is like things I don't really talk about a lot, but when I was a little girl, I was an only child first off, and I spent a lot of time alone. I spent a lot of time in my room. I loved being alone. I loved spending time alone. I would just like play games with myself and make up, imaginary stories and characters. I remember spinning in circles a lot. I just really enjoyed spinning in circles a lot as a child. I was obsessed with Jurassic Park. It was the only movie that I would watch. And my grandmother loves to tell everyone when she gets to talk about this, I could put on Jurassic Park and she would sit there and watch the entire movie, and the second went off, she would just say, "Park, park," and they would turn the movie right back on and I would just watch it. And my mom said she could literally just get everything done in the house, all her chores, and I would just sit there, and it was like the only thing I wanted to watch. And I just thought those were, cool little quirks about myself. Like, oh, cool, yeah. All kids have their favorite things, but it was like the only thing that I wanted to watch. And she also told me, and I still do it now, I have trained myself. And this is why I'm kind of like, the way to tell this story is very interesting, because when you don't find out or understand or feel like you are a high masking autistic woman until you're in your 30s, 20s, teens, even this is something that you're finding out much later in life. A lot of the things that you're already doing in your life, you've like trained yourself to do. You've programmed, conditioned yourself. You've been taught, like people teach you how to be around them, or whatever. And so I used to always walk around on my tippy toes, like everywhere. I never had my feet flat on the ground. And I have very like specific memories of people telling me, like, put your feet down, like stop walking like that, etc. Like, or why do you walk like that? And I don't remember, like, I know like I had a speech impediment, but lots of little kids have speech impediments. But I know there was a lot that happened in my childhood that when I understand more about autism now and look back on my childhood, a lot of it makes sense. And when I first went to preschool, I was bullied in preschool, and I was pretty much bullied throughout most of my childhood. Preschool into elementary school into middle school into high school, I was bullied throughout all of my formative school years. And a lot of the times, like, as a really young child, I don't remember why, but I remember like feeling like I just would prefer to be alone. I prefer to be by myself, and I used to beg my mom to homeschool me, and I begged to I'll be good. I won't, like, I'll just stay in my room, be in my pajamas. Like, that just sounded like a dream come true to me. And I was never like able to do that, but I remember for like most school years asking that. And we moved quite often where I felt like, hey, I mean, might as well just kind of, put me, just teach me here. But I thought a lot of this was just about being an introvert or being like, just little quirks, or even from an astrological perspective, because I'm really interested in astrology, that I felt like a lot of these things, these isms, could really be explained by my astrological placements, like some of the difficulties, like in making friends. I was like, maybe it's, a placement of something in the friendship house or transit. Maybe the reason why, I feel different and weird from everyone else is because I have Uranus and Neptune conjunct my ascendant. Like, I really was heavily interested in systems that teach you about a person because I wanted to understand why things were the way they were, why I was the way I was, and it helped me to also understand other people better so that I could kind of not be who they needed me to be, but I could be more agreeable, more harmonizing to them. And I've watched so many videos, not just like, this isn't like I just started watching these recently. I thought something was off about me probably closer to the end of high school. I knew something was off about me just because of how everyone else around me was, but everyone just kept saying, well, like my mom would explain it, just like, you're a child. You're like, maybe they're just acting more mature, maybe, but I got told often throughout life in my adult years, like how naive I was, how childlike I seemed, how children really liked me, and I got like the children always gravitated toward me, and like children didn't see me as an adult, and that's something I still struggle with now, is like children recognizing me as an adult. And I just thought for a while, I was like, oh, it's just because I'm good with kids. And like the more I'm actually allowing myself to read all the signs and the traits, because usually I would just like, I would watch videos here and there and then just kind of like, oh, whatever. And then something was just like, my sister and my mom started watching Love on the Spectrum, and it was like their show, and they're like, hey, you want to watch it with us? And I was like, sure. And as I was watching it and I was seeing like these women on the show, I was like in shock at how like, I was like, oh my god, I do that. Oh my god, I do that. Oh my god, I do that too. Or like, just, it was interesting to me, and so it was already on my mind. But I'm like kind of going all over the place because I don't really know how to like weave all of it together. But essentially throughout most of my life, I've done certain things, had certain things that I just thought were because I was just different. Not because like maybe I had something that a lot of other people also experience that is not, it's like neurodivergent. And like issues with textures, certain fabrics, lights were always a thing for me, frequencies, noises. Like I can hear like things that are plugged in and it'll just be like this noise, and I have to unplug stuff. I have to cover like all the lights in my room when I sleep. No light can be on me. The blanket has to be a certain way. My pant legs and my pajamas have to be a certain way. Like all of these things. And I have stims as well, and I used to like to spin, and I used to like to walk around on my tippy toes, and I don't know if cheek biting counts. I don't know if that's really a thing that is involved in that. I haven't really looked too deeply into all of it, but I do know that that was like a nervous thing I would do, is just start biting my cheeks. And I remember because I went to the dentist and he was like, you gotta stop biting your cheeks. And like the way they said it was just like, it kind of just hit different. I was like, oh, okay. But there were just a lot of things, isms, and it wasn't until like I first got revealed to this world until I was like 20, 21, 22, like that kind of age group. And I was dating this guy, and he was severely ADHD. And at this time, actually, also as well, my mother was diagnosed with bipolar, but she didn't believe her doctor. But I remember like when she was like, can you believe they diagnosed me with that? And I remember like kind of sitting with that. And she also had ADHD as well. And she does acknowledge that she has ADHD, but they also diagnosed her with that. And I've looked into complex trauma and all this as well, but I remember that was happening at the same time that my partner decided to go get tested because he was really struggling. What he didn't understand was like when he and I would spend time together, like he could hold a conversation. And like he started getting uncomfortable because he didn't understand why it was so easy for him to talk to me, because he had had such difficulty just speaking like his whole life. and I could understand that. And he went to go get tested, and like he showed me all his paperwork and stuff, and they said, you know, you have severe ADHD. I also potentially thought that he could have been autistic, but that whole experience of him being tested and having that validated and understanding like there's not something wrong with him, but like it's just kind of like something, I thought it was also complex trauma, but a lot of things that it doesn't mean like you have to struggle. It just means you have different ways of coping, different ways of navigating the world, using different tools in your toolbox, etc. And I remember at that time, I was like sitting with that. And also at this time too, I was already in the work field, and I started like looking at my own experiences when he went to go get tested, and realizing like all of these times where people who were on the spectrum, or like, you know, some like had a certain type of a different mental capacity, they would always be drawn to me, and they would like always come up and talk to me. And I had many moments and experiences where someone would come up and be like, wow, they like never talk to anyone, they came up and talked to me. Or I could like feel like someone who was a little different, like they could sense me, and they would come and speak to me. And then I started asking myself like, why do, and I couldn't figure out the umbrella to put it under, but like, why do these specific people always feel like they want to come and talk to me? And like it was always like, and then I started realizing it's like a spectrum thing, and people on the spectrum could notice that it's a frequency, so they felt that frequency from me and would come and speak to me. And so when that diagnosis happened with my partner, I just kind of like Googled, because I think he brought it up, that's what it was. He pointed out something that I do that I didn't know that I did, and I later looked it up. I was trying to figure out why I was doing it, and then I found out that it was like a trait of high masking autism, and just like autism in general. And it would be like I'm having a conversation about something in my head, and I don't realize that I'm having the conversation in my head, and then like halfway through like my like thought process, I start speaking it out loud to like the person who's near me, like they've been listening to the conversation in my head the whole time. And so I was like thinking about something. I was like, but yeah, that's why I don't understand why it doesn't work though. And then he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, blah blah blah. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, blah blah blah. He's like, yeah. And then I'm grateful he was conscious and aware enough to not dismiss it. He'd be like, you know, you do that a lot. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you just like randomly start talking about something, and I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was like, well, it's not random. And then I was like, oh, I was talking in my head. And so that was really a big thing. And so then I looked up, what does it mean when you're having a conversation in your head, and then like halfway through, and literally someone specifically on a forum, I think it was Reddit, was talking about this. And I was like, huh, but I don't. And then I learned more about why it's so different in females than in males, because of the way females are raised here on earth and versus the way males are raised, and the things we're taught to do and be makes it easier to not notice, and then you get good at masking A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so I started watching Aspy Life on YouTube, just learning a lot about like the traits and signs and symptoms, but that's not a way to diagnose. But a lot of it was validating for me. A lot of it helped me feel better and helped me understand like my intense like interests. Like I was super obsessed with, I considered myself a cinephile. I was really obsessed with movies, and I got really into penguins for a long time. I was really into snow globes for a really long time, and I like let those specific things go. But now for me, it's like I'm really into astrology, just like I don't think I ever won't be, and just spirituality and the spiritual journey in general, because I feel that a lot of the tools and things that I found on this specific path have helped me to heal, and not necessarily not be high masking or whatever, but it's helped me to be more human. Because in my own personal perspective, like sometimes the labels sound weird, but to me, like people who are autistic might just be a different type of starseed. They might just be a different kind of alien, like being here on Earth, like half human, half, you know, Pleiadian, half human, half Arcturian. Like that's what it feels like to me. That doesn't have to be the truth for anyone else. That's just how I felt about it. I was like, is it autistic or is it alien? Like starseed? Is it higher dimensional? Is it multi-dimensional? Is it galactic, etc., and so on? And anyway, that's a going off on a tangent. So I watched those videos. I understood that there's intense interest, which I have, the stimming, the sensory things. I had a lot of things about food, a lot of things about my routine, about my ritual, like But all those things felt natural to me. They felt like something you're supposed to do, but they helped me feel comfortable and like not losing my mind. But I was also really good about like hiding all of my stuff underneath, and then like having these emotional outbursts and like not being able to regulate my emotions and feeling overwhelmed. Like I've struggled making friends, and if you watch videos on my channel, I've had multiple videos about like, why is it so hard for me to have friends? Why am I struggling to have friendships? And just recently, just in the last couple months, because I also thought my husband might be autistic. I know he has some ADHD traits and complex trauma, but I was like, perhaps he could also be. And and also too, because like almost every partner I've had, like my first partner definitely identified as being autistic and asexual, and like some of the things that you would find in that. And then my second partner got diagnosed severe ADHD, and he's been so like, again, the wavelength, the frequency. But I told him recently, because he and I can get super anxious when we're going to like interact with other people, and when we're doing things where we can't predict what's going to happen, which is like a big thing for me, like not understanding the dynamics. Like I cannot do phone calls. Like I get a lot of anxiety and like will refuse to make phone calls because I don't know what they're gonna ask or what they could say. And I also like have difficulty like processing the information when I have the phone on my head. I don't know why. I think it might just be the frequency of the phone. But I told him one time, I was like, don't you feel like a lot of the things that people are confused about what you do or what I do, like the way we are, the way we act, the way we respond to things, don't you feel like if like people, if like I said like, oh, I'm on the spectrum, I'm autistic, that it would immediately like, they'd be like, oh, okay, like it would immediately like take off so much judgment, so much shame, so much guilt, so much like frustration that people place on you for not doing things the way that they think you should be doing them. Having that like, oh, that label would help them understand me better. I don't need the label to help me feel better, but I'm understanding I fit underneath this label. And so, like I said, we were watching Love on the Spectrum, and more videos kept popping up on my YouTube recommended about it, and like I said, like, fine, I'll watch these videos, like signs and traits if you're high masking, and like I had all of them because I first found highly sensitive person before I found about autism, and I found highly sensitive person even before I met the partner who was diagnosed as that. And I was like, yes, I have all these things. Yes, I have this, I have this, I have this, I have this. Like all the things. I had all the things. And even in the videos I've watched, all of them have been yes, and all the tests that I've taken have been yes. But there's just still something about like, I don't know, like how do you move and navigate about life, understanding that you have this or experiencing this and trying to tell other people about it without like, I mean, eventually I probably will like to go see a doctor. There's not really any in my area. But how do you go about like trying to express or explain this to people without having that doctor to say like, oh, I was diagnosed by this doctor? I feel like a lot of people don't give you the grace or the space to honor what you know, what you feel, what you like, finally it clicks. And I like had like, I was crying just right before I made this video as I was listening to everything, reading all the comments and just being like sitting with like, oh, that's what it is. And like already having this feeling, I've had this feeling so many times, and just like I've never really, like I said, words have power, words have meaning. So like to really like say that, oh yeah, I'm asking autistic woman, to like say that is interesting, and not like it doesn't really change much about who I am, like in the experiences at least that I share with you on here on YouTube, because when I make videos on YouTube, it's just like basically me in my safe space, doing things I like to do, talking about things I like. A lot of times you're not seeing the things that make me like overwhelmed and like want to freak out, and no one can tell. Like for a long time, my husband had no idea that I was severely stressed out and anxious, because it all just like compiles inside of my solar plexus, and my face is the typical mask, the mask I've had for so many years. It was like, yeah, yeah, and on the inside, that's not at all what I'm feeling. That's not at all what I'm experiencing. And I've just never really learned how to do that. So, yeah. I don't know. I just needed to talk about it and kind of process some of it, because it's just been a lot. And I've been like trying to figure out why I struggle so much to do certain things, especially because of like I see other people doing things, like, you know what I mean? Like I like struggle to make phone calls. I have to mentally prepare. I have like sometimes I have to write the things down that I want to say, or like I'll rehearse it before, like going into any kind of social situation. It's more specific to people within my age group, and I think that could just be trauma from being bullied by people who are in my age group. But those are like I sweat severely. Like not even severely, it's more like, if you know, typically when I sweat I don't smell, but I smell when I stress sweat, and so I can always tell. Sometimes my partner will experience this as well, and I think we've really been like like helping each other through some of our social anxious situations because we both understand, we both experience it. So I'll just kind of be there to assist him in ways that I'm stronger in certain areas and he's stronger in certain areas. So like where I might be a little bit more anxious about a phone call, he won't be. But where he may be more anxious about the in-person interaction, I won't be, because I know what to expect better in those. Like especially if I'm going in like, this place is for oil changes, I know the questions will be about all of these things, so let me know all of the answers first, so that when I go in, it looks like I know what I'm doing. I'm prepared. I've prepared myself for all of the outcomes. But when we go into social situations where you don't know, guess what? I get anxious. I get freaked out because I'm like, oh my god, what if they ask me this? What if they talk about that? What if, like, it's unnecessary? But that's kind of just what happens. And yeah, I'm learning how to navigate through that. And my spiritual journey has been really helpful in that, like learning how to ground, learning how to be in my body, kind of being okay with not always saying something, or like even learning how to be more of a conscious communicator and expressing to people who I maybe hang out with, hey, just so you know, like, I'm not the best at this or that, but it doesn't mean this, like. Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to talk about this because I feel like, and by the way, as I'm realizing all this, the Sun in Pisces, Saturn is in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces went conjunct today, and based on Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology, she said expect like some kind of like illumination of something to come up. And in whole signs, I have Saturn in Pisces in the 3rd house, which can represent delayed speech, delayed expression, delayed etc. and so on. But I also have it in the 2nd in Placidus, so I don't really know about all that. But yeah, so I'm just gonna put this out there, and I just trust that someone else is gonna understand. Well, I know someone else is gonna understand exactly how I'm feeling about all of this, and like understanding that it's not like the label makes me, the label helps other people understand me. And that's all that really. And it will help me have more grace and more acceptance about why I am the way I am, and the things that are happening in my life, and why things are happening the way they are in my life, and now ways that I may be able to better navigate it. So it's good. It's just a little like, imagine like imagine basically like, I guess that's why they use the word diagnose, but imagine like being able to like have a checklist of like very specific things, and someone comes and says, do you do this, and all of those things get checked off. And it's not like you're like checking them off because you want to. It's like, yeah, it's just like, it's not like, oh yeah, I love that I do this, and this. If someone came and like had that whole checklist for something for you, and there's like, oh, well that means this, taking that in and like trying to like then like understand what that means for like how you navigate life can be a lot. So I'm just kind of like experiencing it right now in this moment, and I just needed to talk about it. So there's so much more I could say. Excuse me. So many more experiences that I've had in this specific arena of life, like my whole life, basically. And like I said, I'm just usually alone in my room, or sometimes with my partner, but if you look at my channel, it's very clear I'm usually alone and spending time by myself talking about my intense interests. So thank you for joining me for this share. I trust that if you've followed on my journey this far and you subscribe, that maybe whatever kind of wavelength or frequency or spectrum you're on, you resonate as well, or maybe have someone in your life that you can support in that way. And if you haven't been on this channel before, then hello, welcome. this is what's going on right now. And I thank you for clicking on this video and watching till the end and kind of just being here for me in this moment as I process finally being like, okay, yeah, I can't deny it anymore. So yeah, thank you for receiving this. I'm always really bad about ending these, so thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. As always, I'm sending you peace and I'm sending you love.